What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted, not by fangs, but by an undeniable pull of destiny? Imagine centuries of unwavering loyalty, shattered by a single, mesmerizing encounter. We're delving into a story where an ancient vampire hunter's sworn duty clashes head-on with an impossible, breathtaking love for the very immortal he's meant to destroy. Can love truly conquer an eternity of hatred? Hit that subscribe button if you love stories like this, so I'll keep them coming. They say blood remembers what the heart tries to forget. Desmond Ashcroft was born into darkness, though not the kind that craves it. His family line stretched back 900 years, an unbroken chain of hunters sworn to a single purpose: eradicate the vampire scourge from the earth. Every Ashcroft male took the oath at 16, branded with silver sigils that burned into flesh and soul alike, binding them to their sacred duty until death claimed them. And Desmond had taken that oath 237 years ago. He moved through the world like a blade cutting through silk. Unseen. Precise. Deadly. His weapons were forged from consecrated silver and ash wood from trees that had never known moonlight, passed down through generations and soaked in the blood of 1,000 kills. He carried them the way other men carried memories: close, familiar, essential. Tonight, the cobblestone streets of Prague glistened with recent rain. Gas lamps flickered against the encroaching fog, casting shadows that danced and twisted like living things. Desmond's boots made no sound as he tracked his quarry through the old town, his hunter's instincts honed to a razor's edge after 2 centuries of kills. The vampire he pursued tonight was rumored to be ancient. Powerful. Responsible for 17 deaths in the past month alone. Desmond felt nothing as he followed the trail. No anger. No righteousness. Only the cold, mechanical certainty of his purpose. Vampires were abominations. Parasites. His family's sacred texts made that abundantly clear. To hesitate was to betray every Ashcroft who had come before him. Yet lately, in the quiet hours before dawn, Desmond had begun to feel the weight of his immortality differently. 237 years of killing. Of solitude. Of watching the world change while he remained frozen in purpose and time, sustained by the very magic that bound him to his oath. The hunter's brand granted him extended life, strength, and resilience, but it had cost him everything else. No family. No friends. No future beyond the next kill. He was starting to forget why that had once seemed like an acceptable price. The trail led to an abandoned monastery on the city's edge, its Gothic spires clawing at the storm-dark sky. Desmond's fingers tightened around the silver stake at his belt. This was the moment that defined him. The moment that gave his existence meaning. He pushed open the heavy oak door. And everything he had ever known shattered like glass. The vampire stood in a shaft of moonlight filtering through the broken stained glass window, and Desmond's breath caught in his throat for the first time in a century. He was beautiful in a way that defied description. Tall and lean, with silver-white hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes like molten amber. But it wasn't his appearance that struck Desmond motionless. It was the way he was painting. An enormous canvas dominated the monastery's nave, covered in swirling colors that seemed to capture the very essence of starlight and sorrow. The vampire's hands moved with impossible grace, each brushstroke deliberate and achingly tender. "You're here to kill me," the vampire said without turning, his voice like velvet over steel. "The hunter Ashcroft. I've been expecting you." Desmond's hand remained on his stake, but he didn't draw it. Couldn't. "You know who I am. I know what you are." The vampire finally turned, and those amber eyes met Desmond's with an intensity that felt like falling. "Just as you know what I am. The question is, does that have to define us?" "I am bound by oath," Desmond said, but the words felt hollow. "You are an abomination. A killer." "I was a killer." The vampire set down his brush with careful precision. 400 years ago, when I was turned against my will and driven mad by the bloodlust. I killed, yes. I destroyed. I became the monster they said I was. He stepped closer, and Desmond found he couldn't move. But I have spent the last 3 centuries atoning. Learning to resist the hunger. Creating beauty where I once sowed death. My name is Lucien, and I am more than the worst thing I've ever done. Lies. But Desmond's voice lacked conviction. Vampires are incapable of change. Of redemption. Are they? Lucien's smile was sad, knowing. Or is that simply what you've been told? What you need to believe to justify the weight of all those deaths on your conscience? The word struck like a physical blow. Desmond stumbled back, his hand finally drawing the silver stake. You dare. I dare to see you, Desmond Ashcroft. Lucien didn't move, didn't defend himself. I see a man who has carried an impossible burden for so long he's forgotten what it feels like to be anything other than a weapon. I see someone who is tired. So very tired. And I see someone who, perhaps, is beginning to question whether the world is as simple as he was taught. Stop. Desmond's hand trembled. He could end this. One strike. It would be over. But Lucien's eyes held such profound understanding, such gentle compassion, that Desmond felt something crack open inside his chest, something he'd kept locked away for 200 years. I won't fight you, Lucien said softly. If you truly believe I deserve destruction, then do what you must. But know this, I see the doubt in your eyes. I see the question you're too afraid to ask. What question? Desmond whispered. What if everything you've been told is wrong? What if some of us can change? What if some of us deserve a chance at redemption, at love, at a life beyond the monsters we once were? Lucien extended his hand, palm up, vulnerable. What if you deserve the same chance? The stake fell from Desmond's fingers, clattering against the stone floor. He should have struck. Should have fulfilled his duty. But instead, he found himself staring at this impossible creature who spoke of redemption and saw past the hunter to the weary soul beneath. Why? Desmond's voice cracked. Why do you paint? Lucien's expression softened. Because I spent a century destroying beautiful things. Now I create them. Each painting is a prayer for forgiveness. A testament that change is possible, even for creatures like me. The 17 deaths were committed by a fledgling vampire I've been tracking. One I hope to save before she killed again. Lucien's jaw tightened. I failed. She escaped 3 nights ago. I remained here, knowing a hunter would come, hoping I could explain before. He gestured to the fallen stake. Desmond's world tilted. You're hunting vampires. I'm trying to stop the cycle. To prove we don't all have to be monsters. Lucien's amber eyes blazed with conviction. Some of us can be better. Want to be better. And in that moment, standing in the ruins of an ancient monastery with moonlight painting them both in silver, Desmond felt the foundations of his entire existence shift. This vampire, this beautiful, broken, hopeful creature, represented everything he'd been taught to destroy. But looking at him, Desmond saw only a mirror of his own desperate longing for purpose beyond duty, for connection beyond solitude, for a future that held something other than an endless parade of deaths. I should kill you, Desmond said, but it sounded like a question. Yes, Lucien agreed. You should. Neither of them moved. The weeks that followed were a study in contradiction. Desmond told himself he was gathering evidence, confirming Lucien's claims about the fledgling vampire. But the truth was simpler and far more dangerous, he couldn't stay away. They hunted together through Prague's shadowed streets, an unlikely partnership bound by a common enemy. Lucien taught Desmond to see the signs he'd missed before, the difference between a vampire consumed by bloodlust and one fighting to maintain their humanity. And Desmond, in turn, shared the hunter's knowledge that had been hoarded by his order for centuries. They talked through the long nights. Lucien spoke of his human life 4 centuries ago, of the art he'd created before his turning, of the darkness that had consumed him and the slow, agonizing climb back toward the light. Desmond found himself sharing things he'd never told another soul, the crushing loneliness of his immortality, the nightmares that plagued him still, the growing certainty that his oath had cost him more than he'd ever understood. "Do you regret it?" Lucien asked one night as they sat in his monastery sanctuary, surrounded by his paintings. "Taking the oath?" Desmond was silent for a long moment. "I regret that I never questioned it. That I accepted what I was told without ever asking if there might be another way." "It's not too late," Lucien said gently. "To choose differently. The oath is binding. If I break it, I forfeit my life." Then perhaps, Lucien's hand found Desmond's in the darkness, some things are worth dying for. Or worth truly living for. The touch sent lightning through Desmond's veins. He should have pulled away. Should have remembered his duty, his purpose, his oath. Instead, he held on tighter. When they finally cornered the fledgling vampire in an abandoned warehouse, Desmond saw what Lucien had described, a young woman, barely turned, consumed by hunger and terror and rage. She fought with the desperation of the damned, and Desmond moved to strike the killing blow. "Wait." Lucien stepped between them, his hands raised. "Please. Let me try." What followed was the most extraordinary thing Desmond had ever witnessed. Lucien spoke to the fledgling in soft, soothing tones, sharing his own story of darkness and redemption. He offered her a choice, surrender to the monster, or fight for the human she'd been. Die as an abomination, or live as something more. It took hours. But slowly, impossibly, the fledgling's rage began to fade. She collapsed, weeping, and Lucien held her with infinite gentleness while Desmond watched, his entire worldview crumbling. "This is what's possible," Lucien said, meeting Desmond's eyes over the fledgling's bowed head. "This is what we could do together. Save those who can be saved. Stop those who can't. But choose mercy when we can, Desmond. Choose hope." And Desmond realized, with crystalline clarity, that he had fallen in love. Not despite what Lucien was, but because of who he'd chosen to become. This vampire who painted prayers and fought for redemption and saw the good in a hunter bred only for death, had become the most important thing in Desmond's long, lonely life. But loving him meant betraying everything. The summons came on a winter night when the stars burned like ice chips in a velvet sky. Desmond's order had learned of his association with the vampire, and they demanded his return to account for his failure to complete his mission. "I have to go," Desmond said, and Lucien's face went pale. "They'll kill you. Or force you to kill me." "I know." "Then don't go." Lucien gripped Desmond's shoulders, amber eyes desperate. "Stay with me. Break the oath. We'll face whatever comes together." Desmond cupped Lucien's face with trembling hands. "If I run, they'll hunt us both. The entire order will mobilize. We'd spend eternity fleeing, and they'd destroy everything we've built, everyone we've saved." He pressed his forehead to Lucien's. "But if I face them, if I tell them the truth about what I've learned, about what's possible, maybe I can change things from within." "They won't listen." "Maybe not." Desmond's smile was fragile as spun glass. "But I have to try. You taught me that. You showed me that change is possible, even when it seems impossible. I can't lose you." Lucien's voice broke. "Not when I've just found you. You won't." Desmond kissed him then, soft and desperate and achingly tender. "I promise you, Lucien. Whatever happens, this isn't the end of our story. The Order's stronghold was carved into the mountains of Romania, a fortress of stone and silver that had stood for 1,000 years. Desmond walked its familiar halls with a strange sense of detachment, seeing it through new eyes. How many hunters had lived and died here, never questioning, never doubting? How many had missed the chance at something beautiful because they were too afraid to look beyond their orders? The Council of Elders sat in judgment, their faces carved from granite and shadow. "You have failed in your duty," the High Elder intoned. "You were sent to destroy a vampire. Instead, you've been seen consorting with it. Explain yourself, Ashcroft." Desmond stood tall. "I found something you never told me existed. A vampire who has fought for 3 centuries to reclaim his humanity. Who saves lives instead of taking them. Who has helped me prevent 17 deaths and turn a fledgling from darkness." "Lies," another elder spat. "Vampires cannot change. It is their nature to destroy." "Is it?" Desmond's voice rang with conviction. "Or is that simply what we tell ourselves to justify our own actions? I have seen proof that redemption is possible. I have witnessed it. And I'm asking you to consider that our oath, our mission, might be incomplete. You speak heresy. I speak truth." Desmond met each elder's gaze in turn. "We hunt monsters, yes. But what if some of them are trying not to be monsters anymore? What if we could save them instead of destroying them? What if mercy could be our weapon as much as silver and ash?" The chamber erupted in angry voices, but Desmond pressed on. "I have given this order 237 years of service. I have never questioned. Never hesitated. But I'm questioning now. Because I've met someone who has shown me that the world is more complex than we've been taught. And I believe, with everything I am, that we can be better. That we can choose a different path." "By breaking your oath?" The High Elder's voice was cold. "By choosing a vampire over your brothers?" Desmond's heart hammered. This was the moment. The choice that would define everything. "By choosing love over hatred," he said quietly. "By choosing hope over certainty. By believing that even I, a weapon forged for a single purpose, might deserve a chance at happiness." He straightened. "Yes, I love him. And I will not kill him. If that means my death, so be it. But I will not betray what I know to be right." Silence fell like snow. The High Elder studied Desmond for a long, terrible moment. Then, impossibly, the ancient hunter smiled. "Finally," he said softly. "After 200 years, you've learned the final lesson." Desmond stared. "What?" "The oath binds us to hunt the darkness, yes. But it does not bind us to blind hatred." The High Elder rose, moving with the careful grace of extreme age. "The secret we keep from young hunters, the truth you must discover for yourself, discernment is the highest calling. To know when to strike and when to show mercy. To understand that not all vampires are beyond redemption." His eyes gleamed. "And to have the courage to love despite the cost. You knew? We've been watching your progress with the vampire Lucien for weeks. Waiting to see what choice you would make." The High Elder placed a weathered hand on Desmond's shoulder. "You have passed the test that matters most. You've learned to see beyond the oath to the purpose behind it, protecting the innocent and preserving hope, even in darkness." Desmond's knees nearly buckled. "Then I'm not banished? Executed?" The High Elder chuckled. "No, my boy. You're free. Free to return to your vampire and help him with his mission. Free to forge a new path for our order, one that includes mercy alongside justice." His expression grew serious. "It won't be easy. Many will resist this change. But I believe you and Lucien together can show us a better way." 3 nights later, Desmond returned to the monastery in Prague to find Lucien standing exactly where he'd left him, as if he'd been frozen in place, waiting. "You came back," Lucien breathed. "I promised you." Desmond crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, pulling Lucien into his arms. "And I bring news. The Order is willing to try a new approach. To work with vampires like you, to seek redemption where it's possible." Lucien's eyes widened. That's impossible." "So is this." Desmond kissed him, pouring 2 centuries of loneliness and longing and newfound hope into the touch. A hunter and a vampire, choosing each other. Choosing love. If we can be possible, then anything can. Lucien laughed, the sound bright as breaking dawn. "Then I suppose we're in the business of making impossible things real." Together, Desmond agreed. And as they stood in that ancient monastery, surrounded by paintings of light reclaimed from darkness, 2 immortal souls found what they'd both been seeking for centuries, a reason to believe in tomorrow. The work ahead would be hard. Changing minds and hearts never came easy. But they would face it side by side, the hunter and the vampire, proving with every saved life and every act of mercy that love could indeed conquer hatred. That redemption was always possible. And that the most powerful magic of all was the courage to choose hope, even when the entire world said it was foolish to try. Sometimes the greatest act of bravery isn't wielding the sword, it's knowing when to put it down. This story reminds us that love doesn't make us weak, it makes us willing to question, to grow, and to fight for a future we once thought impossible.
Hit the subscribe button for more enchanting tales every week. Don't forget to keep the magic alive.